I'm Sheana Banks, and I have chosen 3 different topics that we have been discussing in one of my classes, and my presentation will be on multitasking, listening, and nonverbal communication. Okay, multitasking. What is multitasking? Multitasking is the act of undertaking more than one task at a time. It is processing multiple tasks at one time. Everyone thinks that they can multitask, and even I thought I could multitask, until we started discussing this more in my class. We are all guilty of it just about daily, whether we text while we drive, text while we walk, send emails during meetings, or even talk on the phone while we're cooking or cleaning. In today's world, just doing one thing at a time just seems wasteful. But even though you think you're doing yourself, your boss, or your family member a favor, you're actually hurting yourself. And you are also just taking more time by multitasking, and it can even be harmful to you and others. Our brains and multitasking. Does practice really make perfect? One might wonder, if multitasking is so hard, then why is it so easy, and why does it come so easy to us naturally when we eat lunch while we talk, or we talk on the phone while we cook, or we eat lunch while we check emails while listening to the radio, all them different things we can do, and it seems so easy to us. The way we juggle the task depends on how engaged our prefrontal cortex is. The easy tasks such as eating and walking and talking place less demand on the prefrontal cortex compared to activities such as reading and driving. Our brains cannot fully focus on more than one complete complex task at a time, like computers can do. This is why it takes us much longer to complete a task than when we are trying to multitask. When people attempt to complete multiple tasks at once or even alternate between them, errors are more common to happen, and it can also take twice as long. This occurs because the brain is compelled to restart and refocus. A study done by Meyer and David found that in the meantime of exchanging tasks in our brains, the brains make no progress whatsoever. Therefore, multitasking people not only perform each task less suitably, but they also lose time while doing it. The more a person multitasks, and the less they're able to learn or concentrate. The part of the brain in charge of this form of multitasking is the executive system, which is associated with the brain's prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain which sits right above the eyes. Whenever you need to pay attention, the prefrontal cortex part of the brain springs into action. This area of the brain's motivational system, which helps you focus your attention on a goal and coordinates messages with the other brain systems to carry out the task. While the right and the left side, there's 2 sides of the prefrontal cortex. There's a right side and a left side, and these 2 work together when they're focused on a single task. But when the sides work independently, when you're trying to multitask, they work independently when you are trying to multitask. The ease at which we juggle the task depends on just how engaged the prefrontal cortex is. That is why it's easier to check a message on your phone as you eat than it is while you drive. Okay, multitasking is very dangerous, and I'll go over some of the dangers of it. It's very common in our world today, and most of the dangers are already known, like texting while driving can cause a wreck. Not only can it cause a person physical harm, it can also cause mental stress as well, because we are constantly scanning the environment. When a person is constantly multitasking, it not only increases the number of mistakes, but it changes the way that our brains work. Alright, I actually did a test I took 10 different people and I did a test on multitasking, and I gave each one of them a test. The test was very similar to the one we did in class on multitasking. I chose this exercise because when I took it, it really showed me that multitasking is dangerous and it is less effective. So I took the 10 people and I told them to write the phrase multitasking is more than a lie, and then they had to write the numbers 1 through 27 simultaneously while they wrote the phrase. And then I timed them. And then after they got done with that, I had them focus on the phrase only, and then I had them focus on the numbers only and time them doing that as well. 100% of the results were that it took twice as long to work on both tasks at once. The experimenters were more than amazed at how much longer it took them to multitask. They could not believe the results, and it made them realize that that just because one thinks they're good at multitasking doesn't mean that they are, and they actually see the true dangers of it and how much less time it took to focus on one thing than the other. All right, the next thing I'm going to go over is listening. Listening is when you hear something with thoughtful attention. You give consideration to it, you're alert to it, you're not just hearing it. There are many important aspects of listening that influence your listening skills. And some of the areas in your life that are impacted by your listening skills are your school, relationships, social groups, workplace, and organizations. Listening is more than just hearing words and sounds or just simply understanding a language. Listening involves 4 active steps. These active steps include receiving. Receiving is the intentional focus on hearing a speaker's message, which happens when we filter out other sources so that we can isolate the message and avoid confusion and mixture of incoming stimuli. Understanding is the next step, and this is the stage in which we attempt to learn the meaning of the message, not just hear it. And then evaluating is the third step. Evaluating is where we judge the value of the message. And then the last step is responding, or some people call it feedback. At this stage, a person indicates their involvement. Anything can be considered feedback, like, okay, if you yawn at the end of a presentation, clearly the speaker is going to think you're bored or you're not even paying attention. It gives a very negative feedback to the speaker. Another feedback could be raising your hand at the end of the presentation or of a speaker and asking questions, meaning that tells the speaker you're involved in theirs. Okay, some of the factors that affect the listening process. Even though you try and block out other sounds while trying to concentrate, there are many things that make it hard to. Those include environmental factors. Environmental factors include that such as noise, temperature, and uncomfortable seating can also cause us to focus our attention on other factors besides what the speaker is saying. Memory. We are capable of receiving and processing information more rapidly than a speaker can deliver it. This causes us to have spare time to think or daydream. No interest. As listeners, we tend to listen to get an overview of what is being presented and then simply tune out the rest of the message. Okay, the last thing I'm going to go over is nonverbal communication. And nonverbal communication describes the process of shared cues between people. This goes hand in hand with public speaking. It is a system of symbolic behaviors that includes all forms of communication, like words. The most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said. Okay, the importance of the power of nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication plays an important role in how people interact with one another. Nonverbal signals can increase trust, clarity, and add interest to your presentation. It's the most powerful form of communication. It helps to create your image in others' minds, and even you can express emotions and feelings in front of others, which you are unable to express in words. Nonverbal communication is more important than what is being said. Okay, 60% of all human communication is nonverbal body language, and 30% is your tone. That means 90% of what a person is saying is not coming out of your mouth. So you need to entertain and get their attention with your nonverbal communication skills. We tend to think of presentations as 2 elements combined, what is shown and what is said. However, it's much more than that. Have you ever considered how much you're saying without speaking? All right, there are different There are different forms of nonverbal communication, and I've organized them into 3 different categories. The first one is sound, which is the tone of your voice, which includes their pitch, your inflection, quality, laughter, vocalization, the range, the volume of your voice, the duration, and the pauses and silences that you have. The second one is your body language. Eye contact, a key characteristic of nonverbal communication that expresses much without using a single word. Maintaining eye contact shows respect and it indicates respect. Frequent glances, muscle tone and tension, your blinking rate, gestures, facial expressions, which can communicate happiness, sadness, anger, or fear. Posture and how you carry yourself tells a lot about a person. How you walk, how you sit, how you stand, how you hold your head not only indicates what mood you are in, but also your personality in general. For example, if you cross your arms while standing, that kind of gives off, it kind of tells the person that you're bored with them, or you don't want anything to do with them, or you're defensive. If you are walking with your head down and avoiding eye contact, this may indicate that you're sad or you're shy. The third category is the environmental factors. This includes your touch, time, color, fragrance, and odor, territory, and distance or proxemics, which is your own bubble. This is the space that you put between yourself and others. This indivisible boundary becomes apparent only when someone bumps you or tries to enter your bubble. All right, I'm going to go over some of the proxemics, and I'll have the camera go to the screen as well. Okay, if you look at this, I have a chart here, and if you look at this graph right here, you can see that, here is your intimate space. Your intimate space is your closest, and that's about 1.5 feet, you're comfortable with. That's like your relationships. The second one is your personal space. That's roughly about 4 feet. Your family members, close friends, you feel comfortable when they're 4 feet from you. The next is the social space. You don't want too many people that you don't really know too well, too close to you, and that space is about 12 feet. And then the last one is the public space. Now that's people you don't know. So let's say you go to an airport and you sit down and someone comes and sits right next to you, and you're thinking, why are they sitting right next to me? It's because, you have your own bubble, and people you don't know, that's your public space, and that's roughly 25 feet. So you can see that that's fairly large. So. And then also note that each culture can be different. This is just a culture that that's in the United States, but each culture is different. Nonverbal communication and a professional image. A positive professional image is important to your success. Through nonverbal communication, you can create a professional image that projects confidence, pose, assertiveness, and immediacy. Okay, and that is the end of my slideshow. Thank you.